I hadn't seen Ray in nearly 5 years, but the moment we locked eyes across the crowded bar, it felt like no time had passed. We hugged tightly, longer than friends usually do, and exchanged that knowing look people get when there's a history too complicated to explain. He had changed, older in the jaw, sharper in the eyes. I was still the same, maybe just more tired. We caught up fast, words spilling out like we were racing time. Laughter came easy. He remembered details I'd forgotten: my first apartment, the band I was obsessed with, how I hated mint chocolate. His attention felt rare, focused, like I was the only person in the world. Somewhere between our second and third drink, he leaned in and said, "You're glowing, but not happy." My stomach flipped. I deflected with a laugh. He wasn't wrong, though. Things at home had dulled. My partner, good, stable, kind, but lately our conversations were more about bills than dreams. Ray touched my hand. "Come on, let's talk somewhere quieter." It sounded harmless, casual. I hesitated. My silence must have said enough, because he added, "Nothing weird. Just talk." I followed him. Outside, the air felt heavy. We walked without speaking much. The hotel was across the street. He said he had a room booked already, was in town for a few days. I told myself I'd just go in for a while, just to catch up. The elevator ride was quiet, the kind of quiet that buzzes with things unsaid. When the door clicked open and we stepped inside the room, something shifted. It was too clean.
Too still.
He threw his jacket on the chair. "Still can't believe it's you," he said, almost whispering. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands in my lap. "Life's strange," I replied. He opened a small bottle of wine from the minibar, poured it into 2 glasses. I took mine, sipped slowly. "Do you ever think about?" he started, then trailed off. "All the time," I said, surprising myself. He didn't smile. He just looked at me like he was trying to read the parts one kept hidden. I shifted. "This probably isn't smart." "Maybe not," he said. "But doesn't it feel right?"
It did. And it didn't.
My chest tightened with conflict I couldn't name. The wine was warming me, but it wasn't the alcohol. It was him. The way he saw me, really saw me, in a way I hadn't felt in years. We didn't touch.
Not yet.
But the space between us was shrinking. I could feel it. Every breath, every second. It pulled us closer to something neither of us dared name out loud. I told myself I'd leave soon. That this was just a conversation. Nothing more. But deep down, a voice I didn't want to admit whispered, "You're not going anywhere." He sat beside me, not too close, but close enough that I could feel the heat of him. Neither of us spoke at first. The wine rested half full on the nightstand, forgotten. My hands were clasped tightly in my lap, his resting on his thighs. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy, loaded, like we were both waiting for the other to make the next move. "Remember that summer we used to walk by the lake?" he asked softly. "You said you wanted to run away." "I still do sometimes," I said before I could stop myself. "Where would you go?" "Anywhere that doesn't feel like a checklist." He turned to me slowly, and I could feel his eyes tracing my face. "Do you love him?" The question hit like a slap. "He's a good man," I answered. "That's not what I asked." I looked away. The truth was sitting too close to the surface tonight. I'd buried it for years, lived like it didn't exist, but here it was, naked and clawing. He reached over and took my hand, not in a dramatic way, just quiet and certain. I should have pulled away. Instead, I held on. "I always thought I lost my chance," he said, voice low. "That night you told me you were seeing someone, I walked home in the rain like a damn movie cliché." I laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "I thought about calling you so many times." "So, why didn't you?" "Because I knew I wouldn't stop." The words came out like a confession. His thumb traced slow circles on my hand. My breath caught. "I'm not trying to make this harder," he whispered. "But I can't pretend either." "I don't know what I'm doing here," I said. "Yes, you do." He moved closer, his leg brushing mine. My skin lit up like it remembered him better than my mind did. I should have stood up. I should have opened the door and walked out. Instead, I said, "I feel like I've been asleep for years." And now I'm scared I'll wake up again. He leaned in just enough for me to feel the air shift between us. Then don't sleep through this. His forehead touched mine. A second passed. Maybe 3. Then he kissed me, soft, unsure, as if asking permission. I didn't pull away. I kissed him back, just once, and then stopped. I can't, I said. But my hand still gripped his. Then tell me to stop, he said. I didn't say a word. We laid back slowly, still dressed, still barely touching. But the line had already blurred. The damage was done in the silence, in everything we hadn't said. And in that moment, with the lights low and guilt creeping at the edges, I realized this wasn't an accident. This was the choice I'd been inching toward for years. The light from the window cast nearly 5 years, glow across the room. But the moment we locked eyes across the crowded bar, neither had he. It felt like we had drifted somewhere between silence and tightly, longer than friends usually do. Saying the thing we both knew was coming. That knowing look people get when there's on the nightstand. Too complicated. A message from home. He had changed, missed you older in the jaw, sharper I stared at it too long. I was still the same, twisted in my stomach, maybe just more like tired. A knot. We caught up fast, beside me, words spilling out like we were racing time, eyes heavy. Laughter came easy. You don't have to pretend. He remembered details I'd forgotten. My first apartment, pretending. The band I was obsessed with, though it felt like a lie. Mint chocolate. You're fighting something you've already lost. Focused. I didn't answer. Like I was the only person in the world. Walked to the other side of the room, somewhere between our second and third drink, finding none. He leaned in and said, "Do you regret coming here? You're glowing." I turned slowly, not happy. No. My stomach flipped. I deflected with a laugh. Careful, he wasn't wrong, though. His hand found my waist, his touch my partner. Good. I closed my eyes. Kind. The line between right our conversations were more about faded into gray. He kissed me again, my hand, deeper this time. Come on. There was no hesitation now, no pauses. It sounded harmless, casual. I didn't stop it. I hesitated. I didn't want to. My silence, my body answered before my conscience. Nothing weird. His mouth moved against my skin. I followed him, familiar and foreign. The air felt heavy. My breath came without speaking much. Hands slid beneath the hotel was across the street. The space between us he had a room booked already. There were no words for a few days. Just the rush of blood in my ears. I told myself I'd just go in for a while. The thud of hearts just to catch up. The elevator ride was the world outside didn't exist. That buzzes only with things unsaid. Tangled when the door clicked open and we stepped inside the room, that had been waiting in the shadows for far too long. It was too clean. I had imagined this once years ago. He threw his jacket on the chair, but the reality was heavier. Still can't believe it's you. The sounds were softer, almost whispering. The touch slower. I sat on the edge of the bed, wasn't just about hands in my lap. It was about something deeper, I replied. Something we weren't supposed to feel. He opened a small bottle of wine from the minibar, poured it into 2 glasses. Silence. I took not the kind that follows satisfaction. Do you ever think about the kind that comes with the weight of knowing something can't be undone? All the time, he looked at me, surprising myself. Not he didn't smile, just quiet. He just looked at me like he was trying to read everything and nothing at once. I shifted. I turned to the ceiling. This probably isn't heart smart. Still racing. Maybe not. This wasn't supposed to happen. But doesn't it feel right? I said. It did. Barely audible. And it didn't. He nodded. My chest tightened. I crossed the line. I couldn't. We both did. The wine was warming me, even with the shame coiling deep in my chest. It was him. I didn't feel empty. The way he saw me. That really scared me more than anything. In a way I hadn't felt because it meant I had wanted this. We didn't touch. Needed it in a way I didn't know how to explain. But the space between us was shrinking. He reached for my hand again. I could feel it. I let him. Every breath, no promises were made. It pulled us closer to something neither of us dared name out loud. Just breath between us. I told myself I'd leave of what we had become. That this was just a conversation without looking back. Nothing more. The air outside felt colder than it should have. I didn't want to admit, like the night had stripped something from me. You're not going anywhere. My phone buzzed beside me. More messages from him. Not too close. And one from my partner asking if I wanted breakfast. Neither of us replied with a simple "be home soon." The wine rested half full. I didn't say I'd been out all night. Forgotten. I didn't explain anything. My hands were clasped tightly in my lap. Walking into the house felt his resting on his thighs. Familiar but distant. The silence wasn't awkward. Stepping into someone else's loaded. Like we were both waiting for the other to make the sound of the news playing low in the background. Remember that summer we used to walk by the lake? It all felt too normal. He asked softly. Too safe. You said you wanted to run away. He smiled at me like nothing had changed. I still do sometimes. I smiled back before I could stop myself. Everything was fine. Where would you go? Across from him at the table. Anywhere that doesn't feel like a checklist. Longer than necessary. He turned to me slowly. He talked about weekend plans, friends tracing my face. Something he saw online. Do you love him? I nodded. The question threw in the right expressions, but I wasn't really there. He's a good man, I answered. I kept seeing Ray's face. That's not what I asked. Not the kiss. I looked away. Not the sex. The truth was sitting too close to the surface tonight. That look of quiet knowing. I buried it for years. I excused myself, lived like it didn't needed a shower. But here it was, inside the bathroom, naked and clawing. I leaned against the sink. He reached over and took my hand. I didn't cry. Not in a dramatic way. I didn't feel like
just
I deserved
quiet
to.
and certain.
Instead,
I should have
I
pulled
stared
away.
at my reflection.
Instead, I
half
held on,
expecting to see
I
someone
always thought
I
I
didn't
lost my
recognize,
chance,
he said,
but it was
voice
still me.
low. That
Just
night you told me you
changed.
were seeing someone.
My phone lit
I
up
walked
again.
home in the rain
A
like
message
a
from
damn
Ray.
movie cliche.
Are you okay?
I didn't
laughed.
reply, but it was
I
a bitter
stared
sound.
at the screen
I
until it
thought
dimmed.
about calling you
Another
so
message
many
came
times.
seconds later.
So
I haven't
why
stopped
didn't you?
thinking about you
Because
I turned
I
the
knew
water
I wouldn't
on
stop
and stepped into
the
the shower.
words came out like
Tried
a
to wash off
confession,
the night,
His
but
thumb
nothing
traced
lifted.
slow circles
It
on my
clung to me
hand.
like truth
My
always
breath caught
does
when you've run out of
I'm not
lies.
trying to make this harder,
Later that
he
day,
whispered.
I
But
sat
I
in the
can't
bedroom
pretend
folding
either.
laundry.
The room
I don't
was
know what I'm
quiet.
doing here.
He
I
walked
said.
in,
Yes,
leaned
you
on the
do.
doorframe. He moved
You've been
closer,
quiet,
his
he
leg
said.
brushing mine.
Just tired.
My skin lit
He
up
walked over,
like it remembered
kissed
him
the top
better
of my head
than my mind
I
did.
missed you last night.
I should have stood
I
up.
nodded.
I should have
was
opened the
all
door
I could give
and walked out.
Inside, I was
Instead,
spinning.
I said,
I had expected
I feel
regret.
like I've been asleep
I
for
had
years.
expected guilt.
But
But
I
I
now-
hadn't expected longing.
Now I'm scared
I
I'll
kept
wake up
thinking
again.
about how seen
He leaned
I
in
felt
just enough
enough for
hotel
me
room.
to feel the air
How?
shift between
For the
us.
first time in years,
Then don't sleep
I
through
hadn't
this.
felt invisible.
His forehead
That thought
touched mine.
scared me more than
A second
anything
passed.
else. I
Maybe
stared at
three.
my phone again
Then he
later
kissed
that
me,
night.
soft,
Ray hadn't messaged
unsure,
since, as
the
if
silence
asking
from him
permission.
felt louder
I didn't pull
than it
away.
should've.
I
kissed him
hovered
back
over his name
just once,
thumb
and
ready
then
to type
stopped.
something.
I can't,
Anything, I said.
but I didn't.
But my
I
hand
locked the
still
screen,
gripped his.
tossed it
Then
across
tell me
the
to
bed,
stop, he
and
said.
sat in the dark.
I didn't say a
I
word.
thought about choices.
We laid back slowly,
about what
still
comes after the
dressed,
fall.
still
I
barely
wasn't sure
touching.
if I'd ever
But the
see him
line
again.
had already blurred.
I wasn't sure if I
The
wanted
damage
to,
was done
but
in the
the
silence.
truth was clear now.
In everything
This
we
wasn't a
hadn't said.
mistake I
And in
stumbled
that
into.
moment,
With
this
the
was a
lights
door I
low
opened with
and
full
guilt
awareness.
creeping at the edges,
And
I
some
realized
part of me,
the
this
part I'd
wasn't
tried
an
to silence
accident.
for years.
This was the choice
hoping
I'd
it
been
wouldn't
inching
close
toward
again.
for years.